Round the World Lit Audio. Animal Farm by George Orwell. Episode 3, Chapters 8 to 10. The final episode. Full narration script. Channel intro. Welcome to Around the World Lit Audio, the greatest novels ever written, from every corner of the world, in English. New chapter every week. Free to listen. Chapter recap. In Episode 2, the Battle of the Coast repelled the humans. Snowball designed the windmill. Napoleon released the dogs and chased Snowball off the farm forever. Squealer explained that Napoleon's opposition had been strategic. The pigs moved into the farmhouse. The commandments changed quietly. Frederick's men blew up the windmill. The animals began rebuilding. The hens' rebellion was crushed. The confessions began. Animals, who had spoken against Napoleon confessing to collaboration with Snowball, each executed when they finished. Beasts of England was abolished. The animals stood in the cold farmyard not knowing what to sing. Episode 3. Chapters 8 through 10. The final episode. Chapter 8. The commandments diminish. Napoleon was a great leader. This had been established, was being established continuously, with the specific thoroughness of a project that requires constant maintenance. Minimus the poet pig had written a poem about Napoleon, that was painted on the barn wall opposite the 7 Commandments, with Napoleon's portrait painted in profile above it. The animals passed it and looked at it, and felt the things they were supposed to feel. The 6th commandment was checked again. Some of the animals had been troubled, since the executions, by a nagging sense that what they had witnessed was inconsistent with what the commandments said. They went to look. The 6th commandment said, "No animal shall kill any other animal without cause." The word "without cause" had always been there. Some of the animals thought they might not have noticed it before, but Squealer assured them it had always been there, and what could they do? Their memories were unreliable. The letters were clear. The windmill was rebuilt. Napoleon named it Napoleon Mill. He awarded himself the Order of the Green Banner. He entered into negotiations with both Pilkington and Frederick simultaneously, hinting to each that he was about to finalize a deal with the other. He sold the timber to Frederick. The bank notes Frederick paid turned out to be forgeries. There was an emergency meeting. Napoleon declared Frederick an enemy. Frederick had always been an enemy. Anyone who had ever said otherwise had been an agent of Frederick. Then Frederick's men came with guns and dynamite and blew up the windmill. The animals fought them off in what Napoleon declared a victory, the Battle of the Windmill, in which Animal Farm had defended its sovereignty against human aggression. The fact that the windmill was in rubble was not, Napoleon explained, a defeat. It was a triumph. The enemy had been repelled. The windmill could be rebuilt. The pigs found whiskey in the farmhouse cellar. Several days of strange noises came from the farmhouse. Then Napoleon appeared looking ill. He summoned Squealer and gave him instructions. Squealer announced that Napoleon was dying. Napoleon, from his sick, issued a decree making the drinking of alcohol punishable by death. He recovered. Some weeks later the pigs ordered a quantity of whiskey from Whymper and planted a portion of the paddock with barley. The 5th commandment was checked. It now read, "No animal shall drink alcohol to excess." The animals were fairly certain this was not what it had originally said. They were not certain enough to say so. Chapter 9. Boxer's End. Boxer worked. He had always worked. It was what he was. He rose before anyone else. He stayed later. He had one personal motto: I will work harder, and he applied it with the consistency of someone who has found in hard work a form of meaning that requires no further examination. He was getting old. The rebellion had been in June and Boxer had not been young then. He was 12 now, and 12 in a working horse is a different 12 from 12 in a human. The body has been used in ways that compound, that accumulate, that arrive in middle age as a kind of accounting, in which the debts become visible. He was slower. He tired more easily. The great hooves that had driven him through the Battle of the Coast and the building of 2 windmills were heavier now. He planned to retire. There was a provision on Animal Farm. It had been established in the early days, when the 7 commandments were new, and the principles of animalism were applied without modification, for the retirement of elderly animals. When an animal was too old to work, it would be given a pension, a plot of land and enough food to see out its days. Boxer planned to retire when he turned 12 in the spring. He collapsed while dragging a load of stone for the windmill. He lay in the field unable to rise, his lungs heaving. The animals came. They stood around him. Clover pressed her nose to his neck. Benjamin, who had never expressed an opinion about anything, who had maintained his sardonic distance from the entire project of Animal Farm since the beginning, Benjamin stood beside Boxer and said nothing. Napoleon said, "Boxer will be taken to the veterinary hospital in town. He will receive the best treatment available." A van came. Boxer was loaded into the van. Benjamin, who could read as well as any pig, read the letters on the side of the van. He ran. He cried out to the other animals. He said, "Do you not see what is written on that van? They are taking Boxer to the knackers." The animals ran after the van. They called to Boxer. He looked out through the small window at the back. He tried to kick out the partition. He could not. He had no strength left. The van drove away. Squealer explained, some days later, that Boxer had died in the veterinary hospital, in great comfort, with the best medical attention available, with the words Comrade Napoleon on his lips. The van with the knacker's name on the side had been purchased by the veterinary hospital, and the old lettering had not yet been painted over. Those animals who thought they had seen a different name on the van were mistaken. Some time after this, the pigs obtained money to buy a case of whisky. Nobody asked where the money had come from. Benjamin had said nothing since the day the van drove away. He continued to do his work. He was the oldest animal on the farm. He would outlast them all. He had said, long ago, that donkeys live a long time, and none of you has ever seen a dead donkey. He had been right about that, as he had been right about most things, and the rightness had never led him anywhere. Chapter 10. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Years passed. The farm expanded. New animals were born, who had never known the days before the rebellion. Old Major was a dim memory. The Battle of the Couch and the Battle of the Windmill were commemorated on their anniversaries with ceremony and speeches, but the animals who had been there were few, and their memories were not trusted by themselves, or by anyone else. The pigs walked on 2 legs. This happened one morning. The pigs appeared in the farmyard walking upright, on their hind legs, with an ease that suggested they had been practicing in private. Napoleon at their head carried a whip. The sheep, who had always been reliable instruments for the expression of whatever Napoleon wished expressed, began to bleat, for legs good, 2 legs better. They bleated it for 5 minutes without stopping. Clover went to the barn wall to read the 7 commandments. There was only one. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. The other 6 were gone. The single commandment stood in their place, painted in large clear letters, as though it had always been there. The pigs began to carry whips. They wore clothes. They subscribed to farming magazines. They invited the neighboring farmers, Mr. Pilkington and his associates, for dinner in the farmhouse. The other animals pressed their faces to the farmhouse window and looked inside at the dinner. Napoleon gave a speech. He said, there had been misunderstandings in the past. There had been a period when the foolish idea had been spread that Animal Farm was somehow different from other farms, with different principles and different aims. This was nonsense. Animal Farm, he was pleased to announce that the name Manor Farm had been restored, was a farm like any other, managed by pigs, who were farmers like any other farmers, interested in productivity and the good order of the farm. Mr. Pilkington gave a speech. He said, he had always admired Animal Farm. He noted with appreciation that the animals on Animal Farm did more work for less food than any animals he had ever encountered. He hoped that this example would be studied carefully by farmers everywhere. They drank. They played cards. A dispute broke out at the card table. The animals outside looked from pig to man and from man to pig and from pig to man again. Already it was impossible to say which was which. Series close. You have reached the end of Animal Farm, by George Orwell. Published in August 1945. 112 pages. Rejected by 4 publishers, including Victor Gollancz, T.S. Eliot at Faber, and Jonathan Cape, before Secker and Warburg agreed to print it. Orwell had tried to publish it for a year. When it finally appeared, it sold out in a month. What Orwell argued is this: revolutions fail not when the revolutionaries are defeated but when they win. The failure is not at the barricades. It is in the farmhouse, years later, when the pigs who led the revolution have become so like the thing they overthrew that the animals outside cannot tell them apart. The mechanism of this transformation is not force, but language. The commandments do not change suddenly. They change in small increments, quietly, with explanations that are just plausible enough to prevent resistance. By the time anyone notices what has happened, the language that would have allowed them to resist has been taken away. He wrote it in for months, with specific people and specific events in mind, but the people he was writing about were not the only people to whom it applied. It has applied, in various ways, to various situations, ever since. It will probably keep applying. Thank you for listening to Animal Farm on Around the World Lit Audio. Subscribe so you never miss a chapter. A new episode arrives every week.